In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
One lifetime span of a person, a human being, which is dedicated to study, to shaping up the outlook, ideology, personality. No more, no less. Usually it takes from 15 to 20 years. What it includes? It includes influencing, or by various methods, infiltration, propaganda methods, direct contacts, doesn't really matter. I will describe them later. Of various areas where public opinion is formulated or shaped. Religion, educational system, social life, administration, law enforcement system, military, of course, and labor and employer relations, economy. Okay? 5 areas. I will not write them down because we will not have enough space. Sometimes when I describe all the methods, students ask me question, are you sure this is the result of the Soviet influence? Not necessarily. You see, the tactic of subversion, about which I'm talking, is similar to the martial art, the Japanese martial art. If some of you are familiar with that tactic, probably you will remember that if an enemy is bigger and heavier than yourself, it would be very painful to resist his direct strike. If a heavier person wants to strike me in the face, it would be very naive and counterproductive to stop his blow. The Chinese and Japanese judo art tells us what to do. First to avoid the strike, then to grab the fist and continue his movement in the direction where it was before, right? Until the enemy crashes in the wall. You see? So, what happens here? The target country obviously does something wrong. If it's a free democratic society, there are many different movements within the society. There obviously, in every society, there are people who are against this society. They may be simple criminals, ideologically in disagreement with the state policy, conscientious enemies, simply psychotic personalities who are against anything, right? And finally, there are a small group of agents of a foreign nation, bought, subverted, recruited, right? The moment all these movements will be directed in one direction, right? This is the time to catch that movement and to continue it until the movement forces the whole society into collapse, into crisis, right? So that's exactly the martial art tactic. We don't stop an enemy. We let him go. We help him to go in the direction we want them to go. Okay? So, on the stage of demoralization, obviously there are tendencies in each society, in each country, which are going to opposite direction from the basic moral values and principles. To take advantage of these movements, to capitalize on them, is the main purpose of the originator of subversion. So we have religion, we have education, we have social life, we have power structure, we have labor relations, unions, and finally we have law and order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? These are the areas of application of subversion. What it means exactly? In case of religion, destroy it, ridicule it, replace it with various sects, cults, which bring people's attention, faith, whether it is naive, primitive, doesn't really matter. As long as the basically accepted religious dogma is being slowly eroded and taken away from the supreme purpose of religion, to keep people in touch with the supreme being. That serves the purpose. Therefore, replace accepted, respected religious organizations with fake organizations. Distract people's attention from the real faith and attract them to various different faiths. Education. Distract them from learning something which is constructive, pragmatic, efficient. Instead of mathematics, physics, foreign languages, chemistry, teach them history of urban warfare, natural food, home economy, your sexuality, anything, as long as it takes you away. Okay? Social life. Replace traditionally established institutions and organizations with fake organizations. Take away the initiative from people. Take away the responsibility from naturally established links between individuals, group of individuals, and society at large, and replace them with artificially, bureaucratically controlled bodies. Instead of social life and friendship between neighbors, establish social workers institutions. The people who are on payroll of whom? Society? No. Bureaucracy. The main concern of social workers is not your family, not you, not social relations between groups of people. The main concern is to get the paycheck from the government. What will be the result of their social work doesn't really matter. They can develop all kind of concepts to show to the government and to the people that they're useful. Okay. Away from the natural links. Power structure. Okay. The natural bodies of administration, which are traditionally either elected by people at large or appointed by elected leaders of society, are being actively substituted by artificial bodies. The bodies of people, groups of people, whom nobody elected. Never. As a matter of fact, most of the people don't like them at all, and yet they exist. One of such group is media. Who elected them? How come they have so much power? Almost monopolistic power on your mind. They can rape your mind. But who elected them? How come they have a nerve to decide what is good and what is bad for the elected by you, president, and his administration? Who the hell are they? Spiro Agnew, who was hated by the liberal left, called them a bunch of enfeebled snobs. And that's exactly what they are. They think they know. They don't. The level of mediocrity. In a big establishment like New York Times, Los Angeles Times, major television network, you don't have to be excellent journalist. You have to be exactly a mediocre journalist. That's easier to survive. There's no competition anymore. You have your good, nice income, $100,000 a year. That's it. Whether you are better or worse doesn't really matter anymore. As soon as you're smiling to the camera and do your job. That's it. No more competition. Power structure slowly is eroded by the bodies and groups of people who do not have neither qualification nor the will of people to keep them in power, and yet they do have power. Okay. Together with that, there is another process. Law enforcement, law and order organization and structure is being eroded. For the last 20, 25 years, if you see old movies and new movies, you can see that in new movies, a policeman, an officer of the United States Army looks dumb, angry, psychotic, paranoid. A criminal looks nice, kind of, well, he smokes hash and shoots the whatever drug, but basically he's a nice human being. He's creative. And he's unproductive only because society oppresses him. Whereby a general of Pentagon is always, by definition, a war maniac. A policeman is a pig, rude policeman. He abuses his power. You know? a generality, generalization like that. The hatred, the mistrust to the people who are supposed to protect you and enforce law and order. Moral relativity. The Angelo Buono process lasted 2 years in Los Angeles.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hello, I'm John, and this is the Abracast. We're recording here, we're in Stigmatist Dudes recording. That cold open was this guy, he's an ex-KGB agent named Yuri Besmanov, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about him. So, during this whole, during my whole screed against communism here, which I guess these bonus episodes are kind of turning into, I wanted to do this huge thing about how all this stuff is connected and all that stuff, but I don't think I've laid the groundwork yet out to do all of that. So back to history. During my last Vessel of the Art conversation with my newest $10 Patreon guy, Luke, he mentioned that I should do a McCarthyism thing. So I went and I found this article by Nicholas von Hoffman from 1996 called "Was McCarthy Right About the Left?" So that's what we're going to be talking about here. And then we're going to talk more about Yuri Besmanov towards the end. And I think that we might be able to tie some of this stuff together. And, long-time listeners of the show will remember me screaming, yelling, shaking my fist at the sky, yelling, "McCarthy was right!" I think it was, I can't remember what episode it was. Anyhow, yeah, so I'm going to jump into this. Was McCarthy right about the left? Since we're talking about von Hoffman's opinion here, I don't think I gave too much away. Thank you for joining me, by the way. Thank you for clicking in and joining. If you're playing along at home, please raise your glass, your jar, your canteen, your fucking juice box, whatever you got. Raise it and join me in thanking my Patreon and Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you guys for all the support. What I was thinking about doing, what I'm going to be trying to do here is just explaining about World War. I call the Cold War World War III, and cool your jets. All right, I've been doing that for a long time. How the Cold War is World War III in Vietnam and Korea and Nicaragua and all of that, and how each war kind of leads to the next war. You couldn't have World War II without World War I. You couldn't have the Cold War or World War III without World War II. And what I was going to start piecing out was that, I don't want to say we're on the brink of a new Cold War. What we're actually in the opening volleys of World War IV, which couldn't have happened without World War III. And I was going to be talking a lot about the Communist Party of China and how, if you look around, everything that's going on right now is connected to China. You have the I know it's not an embassy, it's some sort of diplomatic post in Houston where the Chinese are getting kicked out and they're going nuts, shredding and burning a ton of documents because they've been caught with pharmaceutical intellectual property on COVID-19 treatments. So it's like, I was going to draw this line. I was going to draw the fat red line to China, but I'm not ready to do that yet. I'm still kind of trying to set all this up, examine the moving parts. Also there was I'm not going to throw shade in here. There's a podcast out there where they're talking about, like, what is warfare going to look like in the future? And, like, hey, heads up, everybody. This is what warfare looks like in the future. We're in it. the days of giant armies that went away with the war on terror. Like, this is what it is. It's propaganda, info warriors, it's biological weapons, it's misinformation, it's the total corruption of our political system, it's the total corruption of our media. You can't turn on the TV and get a single piece of reliable news. You just can't. And this is what it is. We're losing the war right now because most of us don't even understand that we're fucking fighting it. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. Whew. Here we go. Like, those are all the things I did not want to get into. Okay, was McCarthy right about the left? By Nicholas von Hoffman, April 14th, 1996. The American left has an unexamined past, like the French conservatives who went into deep denial about their collaboration with the Nazis, the National Socialists, a half a century ago. American leftists and some of their liberal allies have refused to sort out their own intimate connections with Marxist-Leninism of the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I would... if you're like, what are you talking about? And I'm not going to get into all this, but I brought this book up when I was talking to Trevor Loudon on the Secret Origins of Antifa. It's a book by Jonah Goldberg called Liberal Fascism. You should check it out. He outs FDR. He just outs him. Anyhow, in a footnote on page 725 of the Witness, in his 1952 classic of American confessional literature, Whittaker Chambers explains on how this came to pass. He observed, it is not the communist, but the ex-communist who have cooperated with the government who have chiefly suffered. Writing at the height of controversy about communists in the United States government, Chambers explained, it is worth noting that not one communist was moved to break with communism under the pressure of the Hiss case. Let those who wonder about communism and the power of its faith ponder that fact. Alger Hiss, he wound up being commie, by the way. For decades after Chambers wrote those words, liberals and leftists held the high ground in the dispute of whether a communist conspiracy actually existed in the United States or was simply a byproduct of the paranoid style in American politics. They came to accept that there was a foreign communist menace, but never a domestic one. Ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to look out your fucking window. There were rancorous divisions of the liberal left in the 50s over who was a spy and who was accused innocent, and who was a secret communist political operative, and who was a straightforward fighter for social justice, while the anti-communist liberals and leftists ranged from Senator Hubert Humphrey to writer Dwight MacDonald, condemned the communists. There was a formulaic, transparent insincerity about much of the left liberal anti-communism. In the market, in the upmarket, universities and other places where the dominant form of polite liberalism thrived, and accusers who had named names and pointed out the communist spies were scorned as despicable vermin, among them mainstream scholars like Richard Hofstadter. The forces of oh, of dom. What? This weird typo in here. Forces of domestic anti-communism were described largely as manifestations of social underdevelopment and popular irrationality, not legitimate concern. As the 60s wore on, the savagery and futility of the Vietnam War discredited the anti-communist cause, and by the 60s, the demonization of the anti-communists had gained currency. And not just on the far left. Everybody from Nixon to Whittaker Chambers to Elizabeth Bentley, a former espionage agent who in the early 50s had given scores of names to the House Un-American Activities Committee, were dismissed as adventurers, opportunists, cat's paws of reaction, psychos, creeps, blackmailers, and Junior Joe McCarthys. As playwright Lillian Hellman recalled, the McCarthy Group, a loose term for the boys, lobbyists, congressmen, State Department bureaucrats, CIA operators, chose the anti-Red Scare with perhaps more cynicism than Hitler-packed anti-Semitism. But in the last year, as though from a buried toxic waste dump, poisons moving with the slow capillary actions of history, long hidden, hiccuping up different truth, the materials that first made their way to the surface in the early 1990s, records from Moscow's Russian centers and the preservation and study of documents of recent history provided proof, past peradventure, that the Communist Party of the United States was subsidized by the Soviet government and used as a base of extensive espionage. See, nothing has changed. There's actually in our colleges, there's actually Confucianism institutes that are totally funded by the Chinese government. They're here, they're spying, they're winding their tendrils into academia as if they need to wind any more. So it just happened. This is just something that happens. So now liberals must face the question, was McCarthy right? Could all the defiant politicians, the martyrs, the civil liberties, the blacklisted teachers and entertainers, the earnest professors, and sincere foundation executives have been wrong? The answer is no, and yes. So just as a time capsule here, this was written in 1996. Do you guys remember what happened? What was going on in 1996? What was going on in 1996 was Bill Clinton was selling massive amounts of intellectual property for missile systems to the Lippy Group and Riyadh with through Charlie Tree. All this stuff is ancient history, but I lived through it. I'm old enough to remember when all this shit was going down. Bill Clinton and Al Gore basically sold the future of America out. And you're like, that's a bold statement. There's actually a whole fucking book about it called the Year of the Dragon. It was written by these two, I believe they're congressional staffers, or one of them was a Congress staffer and one of them was a Senate staffer. It's interesting because when Weinstein was on Rogan probably a few months ago, he just threw this thing off. He just mentioned like, yeah, well, in the mid-90s, the little guy, the Democrats stopped paying attention to the little guy and they took a more GOP approach where they're taking care of big corporations, and he just left it there. And of course Rogan wasn't like, what the fuck are you talking about? Instead they just moved on to like, hey, isn't UFOs funny or what? I mean, whatever. but what Weinstein was talking about was he was talking about this specific moment in history where all this transfer of technology was taking place, and they were all for bribe money. So you're like, you might be listening to me right now and be like, listen to this motherfucking hack throwing shade on Bill Clinton. Hey, I did many episodes on the Clinton crime stories. All right, you can go back in the feature topic link and find them. I don't even think the Lippo group and Charlie Tree was even mentioned once in any of those, I guess, 2 or 3 episodes. So just take it for what you're worth. And if you're interested in that, find that book. I'm pretty sure it's called Year of the Dragon. And it probably came out in the mid 90s to late 90s. I don't have it. I read it back in the day, but I don't have it. I borrowed it off of one of my old Army buddies, I believe. All right, back to it. It has been long known that the Communist Party of the United States of America had been paid for by the Soviet Union, but acknowledgement of even this truth has been hard to come by. In liberal and leftist circles, the term Moscow Gold was accompanied most often by derisive laughter. The requisite that it was not Moscow Gold, but paid the dues of the FBI informants, and that kept the Communist Party of the United States of America afloat. Actually, it was both. Now comes more from the vaults of the National Security Agency. In 1940, the NSA had a top-secret program called Venona, which intercepted and much later decoded messages given between Moscow and its American agents. The recent publication of batches of Verona transcripts give evidence that Roosevelt and Truman administrations were rife with communist spies and political operatives who reported directly or indirectly to the Soviet government. Much as their anti-communist opponents charged, the age of McCarthyism, it turns out, was not the simple witch hunt of the innocent by the malevolent of 2 generations of high school and college students have been taught. The sum and substance of the growth body of material is that Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, executed in June of 1953 for atomic espionage, were guilty. Alger Hiss, a darling of the establishment, was guilty. That dozens of lesser-known persons, such as Victor Perlow, Judith Copeland, and Harry Gold, whose innocence of the accusations made against them had been a tenet of the left's faith for decades, were traitors, or at least the ideological vassals of foreign power. Even moderate politicians who insisted upon the fact that argued that these people might have influenced U.S. foreign policy were scorned. Robert Taft of Ohio said, "The greatest Kremlin asset in our history has been the pro-communist group in the State Department, who surrendered to every demand of Russia at Yalta, Potsdam, and promoted at every opportunity the communist cause in China until today. Communism threatened to take over all of Asia." Secretary of State Dean Ashton, a pillar of the establishment, concluded that Taft had joined the, quote, primitives, unquote. So as I'm kind of laying out my whole case against China here in an unwanted and unthought about, unwritten, unscripted fashion, I also want to point out that this is why we have to deal with Joe Biden right now. Joe Biden is as linked to Hong Kong and China as even more than he's linked to Ukraine. He is such a Chinese finger puppet that's why we have to deal with him right now. Because if it was left to any kind of half measure, they would lose control of the narrative of what's about to happen. So, I mean, there's plenty easy to find things about Joe going, the Chinese, they're good folks. That's a direct quote. They're good folks. The part played by Klaus Fuchs, a high-level physicist who had worked at Los Alamos and had been known for many years as the treason of the Rosenbergs. Nevertheless, for as long as the subject was hotly disputed controversy, was the practice in leftist circles to scoff at the rustic notion that the secret of the bomb could have been stolen at all. Now we know it was stolen. When the Soviets got off their first H bomb or A bomb, whatever it was a complete surprise. They were like at least 10 years away from anything. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, that bomb sounded an awful lot like our bombs. I wonder why. Now we know that thanks to the latest Verona transcripts that Harvard-trained physicist named Theodore Alvin Hall was passing secrets about the instrument which changed world politics in the last half of the 20th century. All right, we're going to jump to our next thing here.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
So the charming Russian gentleman we heard at the beginning of the at the cold open is this guy named Yuri Besmanov. And he was a KGB agent that was stationed in India, I believe. And what had happened is he fell in love with the Indian culture, and he wound up defecting. I think he defected through the U.S., but he wound up in Canada. Anyhow, in 1984, he came out, and he was like, look, this whole shit house is about to burn down. I'm seeing signs of it everywhere. And let me sit down and explain to you how the Soviets did it to you. And they're like, did what? We're still rolling. 1984 is like, we're still fighting the good fight. What are you talking about? And then years later, the Iron Curtain would have fallen down. But he's like, he's basically saying it's already over. We already won. And I found this former KGB agent, Yuri Besmanov, exposes the 4 stages of a communist takeover of a country in a rare 1984 interview. So he's got a bunch of interviews on YouTube. I played the one that was closest to the mark for the episodes that we were kind of doing on this topic. But there's like 2-hour talks that he's given, and over 1-hour talks that he's given out there. And I recommend them all. I think everybody should go out and listen to them right away. But I'm just going to read from this article here. In an interview with G. Edward Griffin in 1984, former KGB Yuri Bezmenov had exposed the insidious operation of the Soviet Union and how communist apparatus viciously overtakes the conscience of a country. He began his interview by revealing that people who towed the Soviet foreign policy in their home country were elevated to positions of power through media and manipulation of public opinion. However, those who refused to do so were either subject to character assassination or killed. So, I mean, a lot of that's going on right now. The cancel culture, I mean, they're stopping short at killing people for now. Bezmenov cited the example of the city of Hue in Vietnam, where thousands of people were executed in one night for being sympathetic to the United States. The city was under the siege of a mass political organization named the Viet Cong for 2 days when the mass killings took place. Even though the CIA would never understand how the operation was carried out, Bezmenov pointed out the extensive network of local informants set up by the Soviet Union to execute those who did not toe its line. Recounting his time in India, the KGB guy revealed how he was shocked to discover the list of pro-Soviet journalists in India who were doomed to die. He said that even though the journalists were ideologically leftist, yet the KGBs wanted them dead. The KGBs. The KGBs wanted them dead. They knew too much. Once the useful idiots, the leftists, who idealistically believe in the beauty of the Soviet socialism or communism, get disillusioned, they become the worst of enemies. All right, I'm going to jump ahead to some of the meat and potatoes here. The plan to execute Indian journalists. The KGB informant reiterated that when the useful idiots serve their purpose, they are either executed or exiled or held in prison. We were a bunch of murderers. There is nothing to do with friendship and understanding between the nations. We have like a bunch of thugs in a country that is hospitable to us. I did not defect, but I tried to get my message across. Nobody wanted even to listen, least of all to believe me. He signed recounting the inner turmoil he faced when learning about the scheduled execution of pro-Soviet Indian journalists known to him. The defection of Yuri Besmanov. His decision to defect and switch sides came during a Bangladesh liberation war, which was described by American correspondent as an Islamic grassroots revolution. Under the patronage of the KGB, Yuri Besmanov lived a lavish lifestyle. He was, however, in love with India, so much so that he did not want the country to be irreparably damaged under the Soviet influence. Despite an affluent career and labels of treason against the nation, he finally defected from the KGB. He disappeared, as many had done in the past. The only possible difference was that he lived to tell the story. Interestingly, Indian newspapers carried ads citing reward of 2,000 lira for information on him. Maybe it's rubles, I don't know. But the informant had by then impersonated an American hippie and flew from Mumbai airport to Greece, where he met CIA officials. All of this happened under the nose of the KGB. The concept of ideological subversion. This is where your ears should prick up. Yuri Besmanov explained that the KGB was more concerned about the psychological warfare against the United States government through ideological subversion rather than espionage activities, which constituted only 15% of their work. He highlighted how brainwashing techniques were used on American population to infuse an ideology distinct from Americanism. He further emphasized how manipulation of public opinion can make people reject obvious facts to cater to the existing perception and interests. Okay, keep your ears pricked up. The demoralization of a population. The former KGB guy, the KGBs, stated that the Soviet intelligence agency used 4 methods to alter the mindset and behavior of people in foreign countries. The first step is the demoralization, which according to him took about 15 to 20 years. During the phase, young people are influenced to question the integrity of a country and raised suspicions through media, propaganda, and academia. Perceptions take the center stage and facts become meaningless. He attributes it to the lack of moral standards in society. For a population self-absorbed in a world of propaganda and theories of Marxism and Leninism, truth loses its grip on the society. The older generation also loses control of the population due to consistent attacks on their moral fabric. Bezmenov revealed that the demoralization phase was completed before the interview and that the Soviet Union was surprised at the ease of its execution. He also explained how those from the 60s were occupying high positions in the government, mass media, the civil service at the time of the interview. Yuri Besmanov further claimed that another 20 years would take to create a new generation of patriotic American citizens. Destabilization, crisis, and normalization. As per the former KGB agent, destabilization of a country, also referred to as the second step, meant altering the nation's foreign relations, economy, defense systems. He said that the process takes 2 to 5 years to execute. He stated that the Marxist-Leninists' hold over the American defense and economic sector was fantastic. Bezmenov said that he never thought that the process would be so easy to execute in the U.S. when he landed here in 1971. He highlighted that a country could be brought to a state of crisis, the third step, in as short a time as 6 weeks, and cited an example in Central America to make his point. So let's see, I heard it's only been like 52 days, 53 days since George Floyd passed away. So put that on this timeline. Coupled with violent change in power structure and economy, the fourth phase of the normalization is kicked in. We're in the new normal. Don't you guys know that right now? That we're in the new normal? This is the new normal. The fourth phase of normalization is kicked in that we can see can last indefinitely. The word normalization is derived from Soviet propaganda. In Soviet Russia, that seeks to downplay a drastic change in a country as a normal phenomenon. This is the new normal. This will happen in America if you allow the schmucks to bring the country to crisis. Promise people all kinds of goodies and paradise on earth and destabilize your economy and eliminate the principles of free market competition and put a big brother government in Washington, D.C. with benevolent things, he remarked. Jesus. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I submit for your approval the simple story of Yuri Besmanov. He reiterated that the U.S. was in a state of undeclared war against the principles on which it was founded under the communist conspiracy. You don't have to be paranoid unless the United States wakes up. The time bomb is ticking every second, and the disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect, he emphasized. You know, I imagine people that see the occult history conspiracy tagline on the show art get into my backlog and they're like, where's the secret space conspiracy? Where's the episodes about how Obama is a clone of Pharaoh? The fact of the matter is, because you don't need all that bullshit. You don't need that. Not to call those things bull. Teach their own, but you don't need that. We have very real conspiracies that you could just look at right now. It's happening. Look out! Turn your television on. Read Yuri Besmanov, and remember that McCarthy was right. I'm having a little bit too much fun. But hey, I might as well have fun now, right? Because I'm pretty sure that I'll be headed to the gulag pretty soon. I'd like to invite and encourage everybody to sign into the mailing list. It's free. I don't share your emails with anybody. It's just a way to keep in contact and let you guys know what's going on. The tarot cards that I designed are now available. You can check those out at advertise.com under the stores. I'm always putting new shirts and stuff up. A listener actually just requested a shirt, a Patreon supporter, so I'm probably going to wind up doing it. She said, I am putting in a request for a, quote, I would rather be talking about wizards and blowjobs, unquote, t-shirt. So I got to figure out a tasteful way to do that shit. And encourage everyone to check out Patreon or Subscribestar. To check out those right now. This month's Fellow Craft episode that you get, it's the exclusive episode you get at the $3 tier and up, is our last episode on Atlantis, which is really fun. I actually learned some stuff on this Atlantis business. So that was fun. So just check it out. Remember to hit up the featured topic link on the website. It has different categories, so if you like this topic, you can hear me babbling about these other things in other episodes, and they're all just collected right there in one spot for you. All right, I'm John. This is the Abercast. I'll let Hilla do the rest. See you guys in a few days.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you can sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.